Searching the web for the most talented, creative, and intriguing independent authors.
Master, your stories are ready.
Ooh, goody. The Emit Blackwell Show, diving into the creative minds of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and paranormal authors. Their fantasy is our reality. Welcome once again, and thank you for joining us here on the Emit Blackwell Show. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. On this episode, I will be speaking with science fiction author Doug J. Cooper on his Crystal series. Doug has been so kind to provide us with an excerpt from his unreleased book, Crystal Escape, the final chapter in the series. We will also talk about how Doug approaches online marketing, building his brand, and how he plans on expanding into another series. So without any further ado, let's blast off into space and explore the intriguing mind of author Doug J. Cooper. Excerpt from The Crystal Escape, the last book in the Crystal series by author Doug J. Cooper. Mac took a deep breath and exhaled, pondering the disorienting events that had changed his world. Lazarus seems to know your hunter and acts pretty unconcerned. In truth, it sounded like she was mocking him. She was using our emotions to manipulate us, said Juice. Don't worry. She'll change her tune when he gets here. That will be soon, I hope. It will be soon enough, said Cheryl, though she didn't sound convinced. We could use your help on two of his priorities in the meantime. He wants a good access point for entry into the dome, and he wants us to slow Vivo down to give him more time to act. Nothing crazy, though, said Juice. He says there's no need for us to be taking big risks. I might be able to help with one of those as we speak. Mac opened new displays and sorted through them. I'm locked out of the nav and ops panel, which is what I expected. He swiped. But like everything else, data from the nav eventually ends up in the record. I may be able to see it there as historical trends. After a moment, he pointed to a screen dense with information. This is the complete nav dump from 2 minutes ago. The drive pods were running at 37% and climbing by a percent every couple of minutes. As he spoke, the display advanced to 38%, and Cheryl asked, if this is 2 minutes ago, the drives are now really closer to 39%? Mac nodded. Let's see if we get lucky when the drives reach 40%. What happens then? Asked Juice. He didn't answer, keeping his focus on the display. They watched with him. After an eternity, the 2-minute-old data advanced to 39, indicating that the drives themselves had reached 40% of full power. Mac straightened and waited, then slumped back into the couch in disappointment. Damn, I thought I'd done something good. And then the deep thrum rumbling in the background changed pitch. Mac grinned and pumped his hands in the air. Ask and you shall receive. This is the sweet sound of drive pods shutting down. She can't restart them until the shutdown procedure completes, and that takes about 4 hours, maybe 5. He let his pride show in his voice. I planted a bug that will cause this to happen anytime she pushes the drives above 40% power. Look at you, said Cheryl, her tone showing approval. Keep it up and maybe I will find a job for you when this is over. Standing, she tilted her head at the door. We should go talk to the others. Chris will be here soon, and he'll be counting on us to coordinate everyone when he makes his move. Agreed, said Juice. Given Lazarus' modest capabilities, this shutdown surely has her scrambling. She'll be too busy to mess with us for a while. What are you going to say to them? Asked Mac, shifting the task of speaking with the others onto Cheryl before she could do it to him. I'm not sure. I'm hoping the right words would come when I stand in front of them. She accessed her comm. I'm dropping the shield, so take care what you say. Mac reached toward the display and flexed his fingers, pulling it up into his peripheral vision so that he could see it as he walked. At that moment, the office door opened and Hedgemo and Mondo stormed into the room. 4 more Sinbads, techs in gray jumpsuits, crowded in behind them. "Hedgemo!" exclaimed MacMac, feeling momentary joy at seeing his super. Hedgemo responded by grabbing MacMac's upper arm in a fierce grip. Mondo took the other arm and squeezed even harder. MacMac's feet barely touched the floor as they escorted him from the room. The two supers hustled MacMac across the lobby and onto the lift. Before the doors shut, Mondo called to Cheryl and Juice.
"You have been given an assignment. Cooperation is expected."
Pressed by all sides by the 6 Simbods around him in the tiny lift cabin, MacMac's trained nose detected a slight ketone odor, the result of the respiration process used to keep the skin and other biological portions of the Simbod alive. The ride lasted the time it took to move up 1 floor to Aubrey's penthouse suite. When the lift doors opened, Mondo and Hedgemo walked MacMac across the small lobby and into her front office. MacMac didn't resist when they positioned him in front of the same upholstered chair he sat in when he'd last met with Aubrey. But when they started removing his shirt, he struggled. That is, until a vice-like Simbod grip on the back of his neck made resistance impossible. "I order you to stop," he said, when they pushed him down into the cushions. His anger turned to disbelief when Mondo strapped his hands to the armrest, cinching them tight enough that it slowed the flow of blood to his fingers. Then Mondo picked up a handheld device, a stubby wand with 2 prongs sticking out like antennae from a bug, and pressed a button on the side. A brilliant blue arc of electricity jumped from one prong to the other, hissing and snapping as it did.
"What have you done to the drive pods?"
asked Mondo. "I don't know what you're talking about," said MacMac, trying to put bravado in his voice. He served a stint in Fleet as a young man and struggled to recall the methods they taught him for withstanding coercion. But Mondo didn't wait for him to search his memory. Instead, the humanoid touched the device to MacMac's bare chest. MacMac had received shocks over the years. It went with the territory of being an engineer on complex space vehicles, so he knew what the bite of electricity felt like. The device took that painful sensation and refined it, focusing the intensive energy into his nerve endings in a way that caused pain more excruciating than anything he'd ever imagined. The pure raw agony became the sum total of his existence. He couldn't hear, see, think, or breathe. The torture lasted forever, and he wanted to die. When he thought he might, it stopped. MacMac gulped for air as he regained the function of his diaphragm. "I must not cooperate," he steeled himself to resist.
"What have you done to the drive pods?"
Mondo asked again, his voice devoid of emotion. "I didn't even know we had fuel," MacMac shouted, anxious to convince them. "How could I do anything?" Mondo pressed the button on his device, and MacMac again dropped into the singular world of unbearable agony. It scrambled his brain and seared his soul as he gurgled and convulsed. After an eternity, it ended, leaving him gasping for air, spittle drooling from his mouth. He didn't think he could take a third jolt. He waited for Mondo to ask his question, but before he could, the door opened, and Aubrey, MacMac now understood she was a super like Mondo and Hedgemo, entered. Aubrey's hand gripped a clump of shoulder-length hair, which itself was attached to a teenage girl shuffling behind her. Bent at the waist, the girl struggled to keep her head near Aubrey's hand. Aubrey pulled the girl over to MacMac, then pulled the teen upright so the two could see each other. What are you doing?" the girl protested through her tears.
"This is Willow,"
Aubrey said to MacMac. Maybe 14 years old, dressed in fashionable clothes, face contorted in fear, Willow looked at MacMac and became hysterical. MacMac had never seen her before, but knew she had to be one of the guests. While Aubrey continued to hold her, Mondo moved in front of the crying teen, took the front of her blouse in both hands, and with a dramatic flair, tore the material apart. The act exposed a simple white bra, and beneath it, the taut skin of youth. Willow shrieked in panic, then started calling for help. "Mom! Mom!" MacMac yelled, but the roar in the ears drowned out his own words.
"What have you done to the drives?"
asked Mondo. This time, he waved his torture device just above the girl's heaving stomach. MacMac stared at the prongs circling above Willow's belly button and tasted bile. When Mondo edged the device closer to her skin, MacMac relented. "You want Tom Torton. He's chief engineer on Aurora. I didn't do this to your drives, but I've seen it happen before. Something goes haywire when the drives reach 40%. He's the only one I know who can fix it." Mondo touched the device to the young girl's flesh. Her body went rigid, her eyes bulged as her face contorted, and a hideous gurgle escaped her throat. "Stop it, damn you!" yelled Mac, tugging at his bonds. "I'm telling the truth. Hurting her won't change that." Mondo pulled the device away, and Willow collapsed in a heap at Mac's feet. He studied her diaphragm, relieved to see it rise and fall as she breathed on her own. He had no doubt Mondo would continue to torture this innocent, something he couldn't bear to watch. "I think it's related to the star hub," Mac said, speaking quickly to delay another shock from either of them. "Check the record from when it was being installed. I knew then that it might be a problem and told the same story. The engineer goes by Tommy Two-Tone. Check and you'll see." Mac held his breath, hoping Lazaro would confirm his story with a review of the record, and praying she didn't notice him removing the insulating tab from the star hub with his thumbnail. Aubrey moved around Mondo and bent forward, so her eyes were level with Mac's. As she spoke, he had no doubt the words came from the rogue Kardish AI.
"If I'd brought a man up here, you'd have let me zap him all day. If I'd brought a mature woman, you'd have let me zap her once before you cooperated, maybe twice." She looked down at the young girl. "I brought her because I knew you'd cooperate immediately. Your behavior is predictable. I zapped her just to show you I would, and of course, to make sure you told the truth."
Nudging Willow with her toe, she called down to her, "I know you're awake. Stop faking it." Then addressed Mac. She said,
"I understand macho protectiveness. Men are big and strong and see women as weak and vulnerable. Maybe your protectiveness is primal because women birth new life. Maybe it's Oedipal." She shrugged. "Whatever your motivation, it all comes down to the same thing. You feel it's your duty to shield her and save her from harm."
Her gaze flitted from his right eye to his left and back again.
"One question you and the other guests can help me understand, though, is why some of these same protective men then go home and smack their wives, daughters, and girlfriends. My behavior model can't explain that."
She turned and addressed the other Sinbads.
"His story checks out on first review. Go test the equipment to see if I can confirm it, then find a workaround. If anything even hints at deception or subterfuge, notify me immediately."
As Hedgemo, Mondo, and the four techs left the room, she returned to Mac.
"Do you think my behavioral model needs to give more weight to ego in those situations? Or is it as simple as believing that if you save her, she'll agree to mate with you?"
She turned and made for the exit, calling over his shoulder.
"Can I count on your help in answering those questions, Mac? I have hundreds more that are just as vexing."
"I don't think so," Mac replied, feeling his bravery increase as their physical separation grew. She stopped at the door and pointed at Willow, still on the floor, struggling to cover herself with Mac's shirt.
"As long as you help, she lives. Think of it as saving her life every single day."
Goosebumps raced up Mac's arms and tingled across his exposed chest. Willow curled into a ball and sobbed. All right, and we are back from that excellent excerpt. And I have the author, Doug J. Cooper, here, who has written the Crystal series. And Doug, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you, Emit. Thank you for hosting me on this show. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. We really appreciate you being here. And, you know, as far as the Crystal series go, you have, 3 books on this so far?
Yes, there's 3 books out: Crystal Deception, Crystal Conquest, and Crystal Rebellion. And what I'm excited about is that next month, 3 weeks from now, the 4th full-length book, Crystal Escape, will be released, and that will complete the series. 400,000 words in 6 years, and I'm very proud of it, I'll be honest.
Yeah, so when did you start this? You said it was 6 years ago?
Right, 6 years. So I wrote the first words in July of 2012, and I'm closing the circle by publishing the last book in July 2018. So 6 years of effort to from starting writing to publishing the last book.
Wow,
And along the way, I also published a prequel, Crystal Horizon. It's a shorter book. I use it as a free sampler that people can go and download from the website to get a mini story and sample the writing style.
So what is your website?
The website is crystalseries.com. Very easy to remember. And as a guy who's been in the entrepreneurial game for a period of time, when I started this, I bought crystalseries.com and dougjcooper.com. For Twitter, I got Crystal Series Twitter and Doug J. Cooper Twitter. For Facebook, I have Crystal Series and Doug J. Cooper. So I prepared this career ready to focus on the Crystal Series books. But if I ever expanded beyond that, I would have the Doug J. Cooper labels ready to go and to expand my career into a bigger profile.
Yeah, so when you were starting this, you have the Crystal series. Was that kind of like always going to be like a large epic saga in your head?
No, I wrote the first book and just wanted to see how it would go. And I realized that I had a second book in me, and then a third book. I hoped it would become a series. That's why I bought the websites and got the labels for the different social media. I expected that's how it would go, but I, kind of like an alcoholic, one day at a time. I didn't try to commit myself to a 6-year project. I just said, let's write this book and see how it goes, and then we'll take the next one and the next one. And just looking that far ahead.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing. It's almost like, you think you have twins, but then you find out you have, quintuplets. So, yeah, that's a great way. It's a different kind of marketing than I've seen so far on the show here, is letting your books do the marketing for you, setting up your website name as being like the base of where you start your entrepreneurial business, and really that's the way you got to think about this independent industry as being an entrepreneur. You got to put yourself out there in almost the same way. And, that's another thing I wanted to ask you about, because for one, anybody, if you're looking at the images on this, he has some really unique book covers. They really flow really well. And you actually have a story about that, Doug, right?
Right. So the book cover designer I use is demonza.com. It's a really talented group of people. And for the first cover, the Crystal Deception book cover, I told them that I wanted a man and a woman in a silhouette showing action, being called to action. And they did a great job. And then from there, for the next book, Crystal Conquest, I talked about sort of squaring up, readying themselves for confrontation. And then as the books developed, we started a storyline. So there's 5 book covers, including the prequel, Crystal Horizon, all the way to the last book, Crystal Escape, 5 book covers. And each of those silhouettes tell a story about the couple, the couple meeting, squaring up, addressing adversity, and then overcoming and leading to victory in the end. I'm really proud of it, and I'm really pleased with how it came out. Yeah.
Yeah, and they look beautiful. And about your marketing, so do you just use the web for that?
Right. So right now I'm a web-based marketer, and so that's Twitter, that's Facebook, and I use Facebook ads. And then on Amazon, I use their AMS, Amazon Marketing Services. My thought process there is that people who are nosing around Amazon Kindle are already an audience that has pre-qualified themselves as a likely shopper. And so I spend a fair portion of my monthly advertising budget on keywords and ads to draw those people to click and purchase.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is especially if you're somebody out there, and I'm an avid Kindle reader. Okay, that's like my main thing. And when you have books out there that are on Kindle, it's on the digital marketplace, you might as well be on the digital forum, And have you found out that any one of the platforms like Facebook, Twitter, anything like that have benefited you more than the other?
I'll be honest with you. It's a constantly moving target. I had a summer where the Amazon keywords was just going blockbuster. I thought I was a king, and then for whatever reason, after about 5 months, it just stopped working. They changed their algorithms, and then I went to Facebook, and Facebook was working great for a while, but then it started having the problems with the elections, and they started changing their algorithms. And so it's even if you think something's working, you can't rest. You got to just keep asking yourself, what can I try next? What can I try next? And so it's exhausting. I'll be honest with you, but it's also rewarding when it works. Yeah.
Yeah. So now back to the books. Okay. Now you've been writing for a while now, and I'm curious about who has inspired you as a writer. I mean, what kind of stuff do you read when you have a chance to read?
Well, so those are two different questions. What inspired me was when I was younger, when I was in my teens and 20s. I was a voracious reader, and I read science fiction, and I started back in 4th or 5th grade with these a series called Tom Swift Juniors. They were the science fiction nerd version of the Hardy Boys or the Nancy Drew from way back. Yeah. And then, Heine Lim and Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and all the greats. I just read everything that they wrote and just loved it. And then for whatever reason, science fiction seemed to either my interest change or the whatever was popular changed, because it sort of lost me. And so I moved on to bestsellers, mysteries, and all that sort of stuff. And so now what I'm trying to do is write the books that I love. I'm trying to reestablish those books. So that's so that my covers sort of harken back to the science. One of my taglines is classic sci-fi. That's what I write. And classic sci-fi, I'll be honest with you, begins, to me, Heinlein really showed me this. It begins with the characters. It's not the story. It's the characters. They're the ones that bring the story to life. That give it that the readers latch onto and fall in love with, or become angry with, or scared of, or whatever. And so that's really what I feel.
Yeah, and it's almost in a crazy way. In some of the best sci-fi fiction that I've read, you could almost take that sci-fi story, the story between the characters. You might have to switch in a few things, but you could take that and put it into a Western, or you could take that and you could put it into a science drama. Just because the characters are so strong in each story that you could almost transplant those if you needed to. And they work out. It's amazing what science fiction can do, just because it's so real. I guess so real yet so not so real to life. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And interestingly, I actually had a reader, a book reviewer, criticized me, saying it's like you wrote a good story and put it in space and thought that made it science fiction. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, that's what makes it good science fiction. I guess I wouldn't say that's what makes it great science fiction. That's what just makes it a great story. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And when you
I agree.
When you have such a competitive market out there and you're trying to sell your story to somebody, chances are you might get somebody who's not an avid sci-fi reader, somebody who reads crime drama, okay? And they might say, you know what, I just read this book about this guy in space, and he's solving crimes like some detective from the 1920s. And yet at the same time, that reader loved that story just based on the characters. And I think that's an excellent way to write, just write what you love.
I agree, and that's what I'm trying to do. And my reviewers have been so generous, so kind, that it's just been wonderful so far. I just need more readers. That's the challenge.
Yeah,
getting more readers.
Well, I'm going to just talk to the readers and listeners out there right now, and I'm going to let you guys know one thing. If you have not heard of the Crystal series, check it out, because you're going to be on the cusp of the end of this series. And most of the time when you read a book series, some people won't read a book series until it's 3 books in. And I was the same way when I read Hunger Games and Harry Potter. I was not interested in the story until 3 books in. By that point, I was ready to listen. And when I started reading it, it blew my socks away on both accords. So, I mean, check out the Crystal series. You can go to thecrystalseries.com and check this out as well. And, Doug, I wanted to ask you another thing. Now, do you have any other hobbies outside of, being hunched over a computer and writing the next book? What other hobbies do you have?
I'm a worker, so right now I'm a professor of chemical engineering at the University of Connecticut, and my hobby is 25 years ago I started a company called Control Station. We make software for manufacturing plants to help them control and optimize how the plant runs. And over the years, so that was my first entrepreneurial activity, and I'm drawing from that for my book marketing. Mm-hmm. But over the years, that concern has grown. We have 15 employees, and we're doing really well. And so between hiking and kayaking and reading and writing and my business concerns, that's my full day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite an accomplishment. And most people out there, they're going to probably be like, what do you mean developing software? That's not a hobby. That's a second job. And adding your writing onto it, that is a third job. So I commend you for all the work that you do. That's really good.
I'm 63 years old right now, so I'm starting to think about winding down, and I can promise you that my book writing is not one of the things that will go. That's the one thing that will continue on.
Well, that's good.
As I start, yeah. And in fact, I don't want to shine light off of the Crystal series, but I'm about 70,000 words into a new series called it's a time travel series. The first book is called Bump Time, so I'm very excited about that. But I'm just going to put that out there for the readers who want to keep their eyes open.
Well, we'll keep our eyes open here. So when you start that new series, I might just have my eyes on you again. So, but yeah, now as far as, because I mean, you've been doing this for 6 years. 6 years to you may not seem like a long time, but to some brand new authors out there, they would have dreamed to be writing a book for 6 years, or a series in your case for 6 years. Do you have any advice for anybody who's just getting started?
The advice is easy. Good advice is hard.
Yeah.
If you're interested in writing, I think practice is everything. The common advice, I guess, is what I agree with, is just keep writing. Just keep writing. The reason I was able to start writing books that were well received right off the bat is I spent 30 years writing manuscripts and educational materials and proposals and grants and on and on. And I wrote, and that's a professor's job, is just writing. It's surprising. Mm-hmm. And they talk about having to need 10,000 hours to develop a real level of skill. And it's probably true, and I probably got 20,000 hours worth of writing under my belt at this point. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the advice, is to just, I will say this, I want to back up. One of the things I read over and over in a lot of these forums is people wanting to be wealthy from their writing, and don't think about it that way. It's an art. Mm-hmm. You do it because it's calling you. You do it because you enjoy it. You do it because you love it. Don't do it because you think it's going to pay your bills, because that's going to be a hard one to follow through on.
Yeah, and for those lucky ones that do make it, I hate to say it like this, because I would love to see every one of the authors on this show make it and really break it out big. But there's always been that concept of people who make it big kind of lose the passion of the art. And to some extent, I kind of agree with them, because there are some authors out there who have made it really big and who have just kind of, let it become more of a community involvement thing, where the people who are running their corporation of their artistry or their authorship have now taken control of what they do. And in a way, it's like you can't explore the worlds the same way again. Now, not only do you have one critic that you go and you give your story to, or one editor that you go and give your story to, or a book designer, now you have an entire team of publicists and marketers and people who are going to stop you if you hit a certain point that says, hey, I know you want to take your book in this direction, but the sales show that you have to take it in this direction. And I fully understand. I fully understand where that comes from, but the concept is there. Once you make it so big that you can't breathe, your story kind of suffers.
It would be a good problem to have.
Yeah, it would be a good problem to have. Yeah, money can't solve all the problems, but it can really solve a few.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here on the show, Doug. It was a pleasure talking with you.
I appreciate it, Emmett. Thank you so much.
All right. And this is Emit Blackwell signing off. Keep on reading and keep on writing, my friends.
Searching the web for the most talented, creative, and intriguing independent authors.
Master, your stories are ready.
Ooh, goody. The Emit Blackwell Show, diving into the creative minds of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and paranormal authors. Their fantasy is our reality.